The galaxy remembers its warriors. Across 10,000 years of recorded history, civilizations have risen and fallen based on the strength of those who fought for them. The Sith Empire conquered through dark passion and overwhelming power. The Jedi Order maintained peace through discipline and connection to the Force. The Mandalorians carved their legend through a different path, through beskar and blood, through clan and creed, through the unshakable belief that a warrior's worth was measured not by birth, but by the battles they survived and the honor they maintained. On the moon of Concordia, orbiting the planet Mandalore, that belief was about to be tested in ways the clans could never have anticipated. The night sky above Concordia's northern forests erupted with fire as something tore through the atmosphere at impossible velocity. The object, roughly spherical, trailing superheated plasma, radiating energy signatures that made no sense according to known propulsion technologies, carved a burning trajectory across the sky before slamming into the mountainous region near Clan Ordo's training grounds with force that registered on seismic sensors across half the moon. Canderous Ordo, weapons master of Clan Ordo and veteran of 100 battles, felt the impact through the soles of his boots. He was conducting night training exercises with a cadre of young warriors when the sky lit up like a second sun, when the shock wave rattled through the trees, when every instinct honed through decades of combat screamed that something significant had just occurred. "Contact!" one of his trainees called, pointing toward the smoke column rising from the crash site. Unknown vessel down, coordinates 73 Mark 92. Could be Separatist infiltration, Republic scouts, or something we've never seen before. Canderous interrupted, his tactical mind already processing possibilities. Full combat protocols, weapons ready, sensors active, assume hostile until proven otherwise, and someone alert the armorer. If that's advanced technology, we'll want it analyzed before scavengers arrive. The training cadre moved through the forest with practiced efficiency, their beskar armor passed down through generations, each piece carrying the marks of battles their ancestors had survived, making barely a whisper despite the rough terrain. Mandalorian warriors learned to move in armor before they learned to walk out of it. The weight, the restriction, the tactical advantages and limitations, these were absorbed so thoroughly that beskar became a second skin. They reached the crash site within 15 minutes, weapons raised, sensors painting a picture that made even experienced warriors pause in confusion. The crater was massive, 30 meters across, still glowing with residual heat that made the air shimmer. At its center sat an object that defied easy categorization. It was spherical, approximately 2 meters in diameter, constructed from materials that Canderous's armor sensors identified as unknown composition. The hull showed scorch marks from atmospheric entry, but remained structurally intact, despite an impact that should have vaporized anything short of military-grade armor plating. "That's not Republic design," one warrior observed. "Not Separatist either. Hull configuration doesn't match any known fighter or probe. Scan for life signs," Canderous commanded, "and biological hazards, if this is some kind of weapon." "Sir!" The sensor operator's voice carried alarm. "I'm reading a life sign. Single organism. Small. Energy output is... That can't be right. These readings suggest power generation equivalent to a small reactor. But it's organic. It's alive. Canderous approached the sphere cautiously, his beskar, the traditional Mandalorian saber forged from beskar, drawn and ready. Through his helmet's enhanced vision, he could see a seam in the hull, barely visible, suggesting the object was designed to open. Could be a trap, another warrior cautioned. Biological weapon contained in armored shell. We should destroy it from distance. Or it could be a survivor, Canderous countered. And Mandalorians don't execute beings without confirming threat. That's the Empire's way, not ours. He placed an armored hand against the sphere's hull, feeling through his glove the strange warmth radiating from within. Not thermal heat, something else. Energy that felt almost alive, pulsing with rhythm that reminded him of a heartbeat. The sphere responded to his touch. The seam widened, atmospheric seals hissed as they released, and the hull split open like a flower, revealing its interior. Inside, nestled in padding that looked simultaneously organic and technological, was an infant. The child was male, humanoid, perhaps a year old based on physical development. His skin was pale, his hair stood up in defiant black spikes, and his eyes, large, dark, carrying innocence that knew nothing of the galaxy's cruelties, blinked up at the armored warriors with curiosity, rather than fear. And he had a tail, a brown, furry tail that wrapped around his small body, twitching with apparent excitement at seeing new faces. What in the name of Mandalore? One warrior breathed. The infant reached up toward Canderous with tiny hands, making cheerful sounds that transcended language barriers, the universal noise of a child seeking comfort, connection, care. And as he moved, the energy reading spiked, not threatening, not weaponized, just there, radiating from the child like heat from a sun, impossible to ignore, impossible to explain. Canderous holstered his beskar and carefully lifted the infant from his pod. The child was surprisingly heavy for his size, and the moment Canderous's armored hands made contact, he felt it. Power. Not the force, which Canderous had encountered enough to recognize. This was something different, something that flowed through the child, like electricity through circuits, like fury through a berserker, like purpose through a warrior's heart. The infant grabbed the edge of Canderous's armor with grip strength that dented the beskar. Not by much, just a barely perceptible impression, but enough to make every warrior present recognize they were holding something extraordinary. "Sir, what do we do with it?" the sensor operator asked. "Him," Canderous corrected. "Not it. This is a child, and there's only one thing Mandalorians do when we find a child without clan, without family, without protection." He knew the words before he spoke them. Had spoken them dozens of times for other foundlings brought into the clan, the ancient formula that had kept Mandalorian culture alive through millennia of warfare, that had made them strong, not through bloodline, but through choice, that separated them from empires that defined worth by birth. This foundling is now in the care of Clan Ordo, Canderous announced formally. By the creed and by our ancestors' honor, he will be raised as Mandalorian, trained in our ways, taught our language, given armor when he earns it, and protected as our own until he can protect himself. "But sir," another warrior protested, "look at him. That tail, those energy readings. He's clearly not human. We don't even know what species he is. What if he's dangerous? What if that power is a threat?" Then we teach him to control it, Canderous replied, with the absolute certainty of someone who had trained countless warriors and understood that strength unguided was merely destruction, but strength disciplined was power. Mandalorians don't fear strength. We master it. Whatever this child is, whatever gifts or curses his biology carries, we'll help him understand them, guide him, make him into a warrior who honors the creed. The infant, unaware of the momentous decision being made, yawned, showing baby teeth, and settled comfortably in Canderous's arms, as if recognizing safety when he found it. "What do we call him?" the sensor operator asked. Canderous studied the child, noting the fierce expression even in relaxation, the way his small hands gripped his armor as if already preparing for battle. The tale that marked him as something the galaxy had never documented. Kote, Canderous decided, using the Mandoa word that meant glory, courage, the particular honor earned through impossible odds. "His name is Kote, and he will bring glory to Clan Ordo, or I am no judge of warriors." 6 months later, Clan Ordo Settlement, Concordia. The armorer studied the strange child with professional fascination that even her helmet couldn't entirely conceal. She was ancient by Mandalorian standards, over 80 years old, though her armor and presence suggested someone half that age, and she had seen thousands of foundlings pass through Clan Ordo's care. Humans, Twi'leks, even a Wookiee cub once, but never anything like Kot. "His growth rate is accelerated," the armorer observed, making notes on a datapad while the infant, no longer quite so infant, toddled around the workshop with surprising coordination. He should be barely mobile at 18 months. Instead, he moves like a 3-year-old. His motor control, spatial awareness, physical strength, all significantly advanced beyond human development. "Can you remove the tail?" Canderous asked from where he stood near the forge, watching Kote investigate a pile of beskar ingots with the particular fascination that children showed for shiny objects. "I could," the armorer replied carefully, "but I would not recommend it. Watch." She gestured, and a holographic recording played. Medical scans showing the tail's connection to Kote's spinal column. Not just attached to the surface, but integrated at the neural level, connected to his nervous system in ways that suggested the tail was as essential as any limb. Removing it would be equivalent to amputating an arm, the armorer explained. The neural trauma could be catastrophic, and more concerning, the scans suggest the tail may serve a regulatory function for his unusual energy generation. His body produces and circulates this unknown energy constantly. The tail may be helping distribute or control it. "What about armor?" Canderous asked pragmatically. "A tail presents tactical vulnerabilities. Opponents could grab it, use it against him. Then we armor it," the armorer replied simply. "Beskar scales, flexible enough to allow movement, strong enough to prevent targeting. The tail is part of him. We adapt our craft to his nature, not force his nature to fit our traditions." Kote, having determined that beskar ingots were not food, a conclusion he'd reached only after attempting to bite one, toddled over to where training weapons hung on the wall. He reached up with surprising coordination, grabbed a beskar that was far too large for him to wield properly, and attempted to lift it. The blade didn't move, but the effort Kote put into trying made the beskar groan with stress, made the weapon rack creak. made both adults recognize that the child's strength was far beyond what his size suggested. "How strong is he?" Canderous asked. "Unknown upper limit," the armorer replied. "I've been running strength tests during his medical examinations. At 18 months, he can lift approximately 50 kilograms, 10 times what a human child his age could manage, and his strength appears to be increasing logarithmically. By the time he reaches adolescence, if this growth pattern continues," she paused, making calculations, "he may be strong enough to dent Beskar with his bare hands, perhaps stronger." "Perfect," Canderous said with satisfaction. "A warrior who can fight without weapons is never truly unarmed, but a warrior who masters weapons while possessing such strength becomes unstoppable." Kote gave up on the Beskar and turned his attention to Canderous, toddling over with the particular determination of a child who decided affection was more interesting than weapons. He grabbed Canderous's leg with both arms, hugging Beskar armor with grip strength that made the metal groan faintly. "Babwir," Kote said clearly, one of his first Mandoa words, meaning grandfather. He'd learned to say it before he learned basic pronouns, before he mastered his own name. "Babwir, food. He's always hungry," Canderous observed with amusement. "We're spending more on his meals than on feeding 5 adult warriors. Where does he put it all?" "Into that unusual energy generation, presumably," the armorer replied. "His metabolism is extraordinary. He converts food into energy with efficiency that shouldn't be biologically possible. And watch this." She picked up a training remote, the kind used to teach young Mandalorians to dodge blaster fire. "Kote, catch!" She tossed the remote toward the child, not gently, moving at a velocity that would hurt if it connected. Kote's head snapped around, tracking the object with eyes that seemed to slow time, and his small hand shot up with speed that blurred. He caught the remote mid-flight, examined it with curiosity, then threw it back at the armorer with casual force. The armorer caught it, but barely, and her armor's impact sensors registered a throw that would have injured an unarmored person. His reflexes are off the scale. His visual processing speed is faster than adult humans. He learns through observation almost instantly, and he's 18 months old. "What is he?" Canderous asked the question that had haunted them for months. "What species produces this combination of traits?" "None that I can find in any database," the armorer admitted. "The tale suggests mammalian biology, but that's the only conventional trait. His energy generation is unique. His cellular structure is denser than human tissue. His growth rate doesn't match any documented species. He's either from a completely unknown species." She paused significantly. "Or he's the product of genetic engineering so advanced it makes Republic cloning look primitive." "Does it matter?" Canderous asked. "He's Clan Ordo now. Whatever he was born as, he'll be raised Mandalorian. That's what matters." "True," the armorer agreed. "But understanding his biology will help us train him properly. If he has limits, we should know them. If he has weaknesses, we should prepare him to defend them. And if he has abilities beyond even what we've observed." She gestured at Kote, who was now attempting to climb up Canderous's armor like a tree. "We should guide their development before they manifest uncontrollably." As if summoned by her words, Kote reached the top of Canderous's shoulders and released a sound that was pure joy, a laugh that somehow carried weight. that made the air itself seem to vibrate, that contained more energy than any sound a child should produce. And then he jumped, not a child's hop or tumble, a full-force leap that launched him 3 meters into the air, higher than physically possible for someone his size, moving with speed and precision that suggested instinctive understanding of physics that most beings spent years studying. He landed on a training platform, perfectly balanced, tail providing counterweight, and looked back at the 2 adults with an expression of pure delight. "Did you see? Coat jumped high." "That," the armorer said quietly, "is going to be a problem when he gets older. And by problem, I mean any ceiling in our settlement is going to become irrelevant to him. It's also going to make him the greatest warrior Concordia has ever produced," Canderous replied, with pride, strength, speed, reflexes, resilience, all the physical gifts a warrior could want, combined with Mandalorian training, discipline, and philosophy. He'll be unstoppable. "If he survives to adulthood," the armorer cautioned. "Power like this draws attention, Canderous. The Jedi will sense something unusual. The Sith, if any remain, would covet such strength. Even other Mandalorian clans may view him as threat rather than foundling." "Let them try," Canderous said, with the absolute certainty of someone who had defended his clan against worse odds. "Kote is Clan Ordo. He's under our protection by our creed until he's old enough to protect himself. Anyone who tries to harm him will discover why Clan Ordo's warriors are feared across the galaxy." Kote, meanwhile, had discovered a new game, jumping from platform to platform with increasing enthusiasm. Each leap higher than the last, his laughter echoing through the workshop as he reveled in the simple joy of movement, of strength, of being alive, and discovering what his body could do. He was too young to understand that he was different, too innocent to recognize that his abilities violated normal biology, too focused on the immediate joy of jumping and laughing and being a child to worry about questions of origin or destiny. But watching him, both Canderous and the armorer recognized that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Not just a strong foundling, not just an unusual child, but someone who might redefine what Mandalorian warriors could become, if they could guide his development properly, if they could teach him to master his gifts rather than be mastered by them. If they could help him understand that strength without discipline was merely destruction, but strength guided by the creed was power that could change the galaxy. "This is the way," Canderous said quietly, speaking the ancient formula that had guided Mandalorians through 10,000 years of history. "This is the way," the armorer echoed, and watching them from his platform, tail swishing with happiness, young Kote repeated the words he'd heard countless times but didn't yet understand. "This is the way." 3 years later, training grounds, Clan Ordo settlement. Kote, now 4 years old but moving with the coordination and strength of a much older child, stood in the training circle facing 3 opponents. They were adolescent Mandalorians, 14 to 16 years old, training to earn their armor and join the clan's warriors. They had years of experience, tactical training, and the kind of confidence that came from being considered the best of their generation. And they were getting absolutely demolished by a 4-year-old. "Again!" Instructor Rav shouted from the edge of the circle, his tone carrying approval despite the chaos. "Kote, You're still telegraphing your kicks. Your tail gives away, your balance shifts. Compensate. Kota ducked under a training staff, swung by the first opponent, his small size making him nearly impossible to target. He grabbed the staff mid-swing with strength that shouldn't exist in a child's frame, and yanked, using the opponent's momentum against them. The adolescent stumbled forward, and Kote planted a kick that, despite being a child's kick, had enough force to send the trainee tumbling out of the circle. The second and third opponents attacked simultaneously, trying to overwhelm him with coordinated assault. But Kote was already moving, his reflexes so fast that he seemed to anticipate their attacks before they happened. He dropped low, swept one opponent's legs, rolled under the other's guard, and delivered strikes that were carefully controlled. Canderous had taught him early that hurting training partners was shameful, that true warriors demonstrated strength through control rather than destruction. Both opponents hit the ground, winded but uninjured. "Match," Rav called. "Kote wins again." The training circle erupted in applause from watching clan members. Kote had become something of a phenomenon in Clan Ordo, the foundling with the tail who fought like warriors twice his age, who demonstrated strength and speed that made seasoned instructors recalculate what was possible, who embodied the Mandalorian principle that skill mattered more than size or age. But not everyone approved. Watching from the observation platform, a figure in distinctive armor studied the display with cold calculation. Pre Vizsla, leader of the Death Watch splinter faction that believed Mandalore had been weakened by peace and tradition, had heard rumors about Clan Ordo's unusual foundling. He'd come to assess whether the rumors were accurate. What he saw exceeded his expectations and troubled him deeply. "That child is an abomination," Pre Vizsla said to his lieutenant. "Not human, possibly not even natural. And Clan Ordo parades him as if his alien biology is something to celebrate rather than purge." "He fights well," the lieutenant observed neutrally. "He fights with strength he didn't earn," Pre Vizsla corrected. "With gifts granted by biology rather than training. That's not the Mandalorian way. We are what we choose to become, not what birth provides. That thing with the tail represents everything wrong with modern Mandalorian culture. Accepting weakness, celebrating difference, forgetting that purity of purpose requires purity of blood." "Should we eliminate the threat?" the lieutenant asked. Pre Vizsla watched Kote laugh with his defeated opponents, helping them up, showing respect to those he'd beaten, behavior that would be admirable in a Mandalorian child, but seemed wrong coming from something that clearly wasn't Mandalorian by birth. Not yet, Pre Vizsla decided. But watch him. If this foundling's power grows without proper control, if Clan Ordo fails to contain what they've adopted, then Death Watch will do what honor demands. We'll eliminate the corruption before it spreads. In the training circle, oblivious to the threat observing him, Kote was being lectured by Instructor Rav about telegraphing attacks while simultaneously being praised for his tactical adaptation. His tail, now armored with flexible beskar scales that the armorer had crafted specifically for him, swished with excitement as he absorbed every word, eager to improve, desperate to become the best warrior he could be. Because that's what Mandalorians did. They trained, They improved. They honored the creed through constant dedication to becoming better than they were. And Kote, foundling of Clan Ordo, bearer of a tale and carrier of unknown power, wanted nothing more than to prove he was worthy of the clan that had taken him in. "Babuir!" Kote called as he spotted Canderous approaching the training ground. "Did you see? I won 3 opponents at once." "I saw," Canderous replied, pride evident even through his helmet's vocabulator. "You're becoming a fine warrior, Kote, but remember, strength without discipline is merely destruction." Kote finished the oft-repeated lesson. "Strength guided by the creed is power. I know, Babuir. I'm trying to be disciplined." "You're succeeding," Canderous assured him. "Which is why I've brought you a gift." He produced a small beskar, child-sized, but real beskar, forged by the armorer herself. The blade was perfectly balanced, the edge sharp enough to cut durasteel, the hilt wrapped in leather that would fit small hands. "This is yours," Canderous said formally. "Not training equipment, not a toy, a real weapon entrusted to you because you've demonstrated you understand the responsibility that comes with carrying beskar. Use it with honor, maintain it with care, and remember that every scratch it receives should come from defending those who cannot defend themselves, not from careless use." Kote took the beskar with reverence that seemed far beyond his years, holding it the way other children might hold a treasured toy. But this wasn't a toy. This was a symbol, proof that Clan Ordo considered him worthy, that his training was progressing, that he was on the path to becoming a true Mandalorian warrior. "This is the way," Kote said solemnly. "This is the way," Canderous echoed. And watching from the shadows, Pre Vizsla made notes about the foundling who was being groomed for greatness, who carried power that no child should possess, who represented either the future of Mandalorian strength or its corruption, depending on how one interpreted the creed. The child with the tail had been found among the stars, raised by warriors who believed that choice mattered more than birth, trained in combat techniques that would merge with abilities his biology provided. Kote of Clan Ordo didn't know he was a Saiyan, a member of a warrior race that had conquered hundreds of worlds before their extinction. Didn't know his birth name was Kakarot, or that his parents had sent him to Earth as an infant to escape their planet's destruction, only for fate to divert his pod to Mandalore instead. All he knew was that he was Clan Ordo, that he would honor the creed, that he would become the greatest warrior he could be, not because biology made him strong, but because the Mandalorians who raised him taught him that strength meant nothing without honor, power meant nothing without purpose, and that the truest warriors were those who fought to protect rather than conquer. The Saiyan warrior raised as Mandalorian was growing stronger every day. And the galaxy would soon discover what happened when the most powerful biology in existence merged with the most disciplined warrior culture ever known. If you want to see more characters raised in different cultures and discover how that changes their destiny, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and culture you'd want to see in the comments below. This is the way. 8 years later, Concordia Training Grounds. The full moon rose over Concordia's forests like a silver eye, casting pale light across the training grounds where 12-year-old Coat sparred against 4 fully armored Mandalorian warriors. His growth had been extraordinary, even by his own unusual standards. He stood nearly as tall as an adult human despite his age, his Saiyan biology accelerating his development in ways that continued to baffle Clan Ordo's medical personnel. His tail, now as thick as a human wrist and covered in flexible beskar scales that the armorer had upgraded 3 times as he grew, provided balance and occasionally served as a 5th limb during combat. His hair remained in those distinctive black spikes that no amount of grooming could tame. And his strength, his impossible, reality-defying strength had grown to the point where Canderous had been forced to commission specialized training equipment made from reinforced durasteel just to provide adequate resistance. "Focus, Coat!" Instructor Rav barked as one of the warriors landed a glancing blow with a training staff. "You're faster than them, stronger than them, but you're still getting hit. Why?" "I'm not reading their patterns," Coat replied, deflecting another strike with his child-sized beskar, though child-sized was relative when the wielder had enough strength to shatter stone. "I'm reacting instead of anticipating." "Correct," Rav acknowledged. "Power means nothing if you can't apply it effectively. Again, full contact this time. Let's see if you've learned anything." The 4 warriors attacked simultaneously, a coordinated assault that would overwhelm most combatants. But Coat had been training against multiple opponents since he was 4 years old, had absorbed Mandalorian combat philosophy through thousands of hours of instruction, and possessed reflexes that made normal human reaction time seem glacial by comparison. He moved through their formation like water finding gaps in stone, not forcing his way through, but flowing around resistance, striking from unexpected angles, using his smaller size and superior speed to create openings that his strength exploited with devastating efficiency. His tail whipped out to catch an ankle, his beskar deflected attacks with precise economy of motion, and his free hand delivered palm strikes that could dent beskar armor when he didn't hold back. Within 30 seconds, all 4 warriors were on the ground, defeated but unharmed. Coat had learned early that control was more impressive than destruction, that the ability to stop a killing blow demonstrated mastery that simply crushing opponents never would. "Acceptable," Rav said, with the particular praise that Mandalorian instructors gave when they meant excellent, but I won't inflate your ego. "You're starting to think like a warrior instead of just fighting like one, but there's something else we need to address." He gestured toward the rising moon. "How do you feel right now, Cote? Tell me honestly." Cote paused, assessing his internal state with the same analytical precision he applied to combat. And he had to admit there was something, a pulling sensation, a warmth in his blood that intensified with the moonlight. An instinctive urge to look up at that silver orb, to let something inside him respond to its call. "I feel restless," Coat admitted, "like there's energy building up, like something wants to happen, but I'm keeping it contained." "That's what I was afraid of," Rav replied. He raised his voice to address the assembled warriors. "Clear the training ground. Fall back to defensive positions at minimum safe distance. We're testing the moon response protocol." The warriors scattered immediately, their discipline overriding curiosity. Whatever the Moon Response Protocol entailed, it was clearly serious enough that Rav wanted distance between Kote and everyone else. Babuir explained this to you last year, Rav continued, his tone becoming more formal. Your biology responds to lunar cycles in ways we don't fully understand. The armorer theorizes it's some kind of transformation mechanism triggered by specific wavelengths of reflected light. We've been using dampening visors to prevent you from seeing the full moon directly, but you need to learn to control what happens when you do. The Great Ape, Coat said quietly, using the name they'd given to the transformation after he'd accidentally triggered it at age 7. The memory was fragmented. Rage, confusion, enormous strength combined with minimal control, and waking up hours later in a crater he'd created, with Canderous standing guard to ensure he didn't harm anyone during the rampage. Your biological response to the full moon transforms you into a creature approximately 10 times your normal size, with proportionally increased strength and durability. Rav explained clinically. Without control, you're a threat to everything around you. With control, he paused significantly. You become a weapon unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. The question is whether you're ready to attempt that control. I'm ready, Coat said with certainty that came from 12 years of Mandalorian discipline conditioning him to master himself before mastering any opponent. Then remove your visor, Rav commanded. Look at the moon, and remember everything we've taught you about maintaining consciousness during altered states. Your body will change, your strength will multiply, but your mind, your discipline, your honor, your adherence to the creed, that must remain constant. You are not a beast, Coat. You are a Mandalorian warrior who happens to transform. Never forget the difference. Coat removed the protective visor that had filtered moonlight for the past 5 years. The full moon's light hit his eyes directly, and his Saiyan biology responded immediately. The transformation was not gradual. One moment, he was a 12-year-old Mandalorian foundling. The next, his body was exploding with growth that shattered normal biological limitations. Pain and power merged into a sensation beyond description. His muscles expanded, his bones lengthened and thickened, his tail grew to massive proportions. Brown fur erupted across his body as his face elongated into a simian muzzle. His teeth became fangs capable of crushing durasteel. His hands and feet became massive paws with claws that could tear through armor. Within seconds, the transformation completed. Where Coat had stood now towered a creature 30 meters tall, a great ape with brown fur, red eyes blazing with primal fury, and a roar that shook the ground and made even distant buildings rattle in their foundations. But this time was different from the previous transformations. This time, Koto fought to maintain consciousness, to keep his mind separate from the beast's instincts, to remember that he was more than rage given form. I am Coat of Clan Ordo, he thought, repeating it like a mantra. I am Mandalorian. I follow the creed. Strength without discipline is merely destruction. I am not a beast. I am a warrior. The great ape's eyes, still red, still carrying that primal fury, showed something the previous transformations had lacked. Intelligence, awareness, control. Kote, Rav's voice came through speakers, amplified to be heard over the monster's breathing. Can you understand me? Raise your right hand if you're in control." The great ape's massive right hand rose slowly, deliberately, demonstrating conscious choice rather than instinctive response. Cheers erupted from the watching Mandalorians. They'd just witnessed something unprecedented, a controlled Uzaru transformation, the beast-made weapon, biology mastered through discipline. "Outstanding," Rav called. "Now maintain that control. We're going to test your capabilities in this form. I want to know what you can do when you're not blind with rage." What followed was a demonstration that would become legendary in Clan Ordo's history. The great ape coat moved with speed that defied his enormous mass, executed combat techniques that translated from his humanoid form into his transformed state, and demonstrated tactical thinking that proved his mind remained fully functional, despite the biological changes. When Rav set up a durasteel barrier, the kind used to protect military installations from artillery fire, and asked Kote to destroy it, the great ape complied with a single punch that reduced 20 centimeters of reinforced metal to crumpled scrap. When presented with a precision test, threading a massive chain through a series of posts without damaging them, the great ape completed it successfully, proving his control extended to fine motor coordination, despite his increased size. And when Canderous himself stepped into the training ground, unarmed, unafraid, projecting absolute confidence, and asked Coat to demonstrate he could distinguish friend from foe, even in transformed state, the great ape knelt, extended one massive paw with claws carefully retracted, and allowed Canderous to stand in his palm without fear of harm. "You've done it," Canderous said, pride evident in his voice despite his helmet's vocabulator. "You've mastered the transformation that we feared would destroy you. This makes you not just a warrior, Coat. This makes you a weapon that no enemy can match." The great ape carefully lowered Canderous back to the ground, then looked up at the moon that had triggered his transformation. And with conscious effort, with discipline refined through years of Mandalorian training, Coat forced himself to look away. The transformation reversed. His body shrank back to normal size. His fur receded, his features returned to humanoid configuration. Within moments, he stood in the training ground again, exhausted, sweating, his armor cracked in several places from the rapid size changes, but conscious and in control. "How do you feel?" Rav asked. "Tired," Coat admitted. "Hungry, really hungry, and accomplished. I did it, instructor. I stayed aware. I followed commands. I didn't hurt anyone." "You did more than that," Rav corrected. "You proved that your greatest strength isn't your power. It's your discipline. Any beast can destroy. Only a warrior can choose not to." The celebration was cut short by proximity alarms wailing across the settlement. Defensive positions activated automatically as sensors detected incoming craft, multiple signatures moving in attack formation, broadcasting no identification codes. "All warriors to defensive stations," Canderous commanded over settlement-wide communications. "Unknown hostiles inbound. Protect the foundlings and civilians, weapons free on my authorization." Through the pre-dawn darkness, ships descended, Mandalorian craft, but not friendly ones. The distinctive angular design of Death Watch vessels, painted in the faction's aggressive color schemes, dropping troops and equipment with military precision that suggested this was no raid, but a full assault. Pre Vizsla's voice boomed across open channels, amplified through his ship's speakers. "Clan Ordo, you have harbored an abomination long enough. The foundling with the tail, the creature that perverts Mandalorian tradition by celebrating alien biology, will be surrendered immediately, or we will take him by force. Mandalore must be purified. The old ways must be restored, and that begins with eliminating corruption wherever it breeds. Death Watch." Candorus spat with contempt. They finally made their move. I should have anticipated Pre Vizsla wouldn't tolerate Kote's existence forever. "What do we do?" Rav asked, checking his weapons. "We fight," Candorus replied simply. "Kote is Clan Ordo. He's under our protection by the Creed and by honor. Deathwatch wants him. They'll have to go through every warrior in this clan, and they'll discover that Clan Ordo doesn't surrender its own. Not to extremists who've forgotten that the strength of Mandalorians comes from choice, not birth." Kote had been listening, his expression shifting from exhaustion to determination. "Babuir, let me fight. I can—" "You're exhausted from the transformation," Candorus interrupted. "Your armor is damaged. You're in no condition." "I'm in perfect condition," Kote countered, and there was steel in his young voice that reminded Candorus of himself at that age. "They're attacking because of me. They want to kill me because they think I'm a corruption. If I hide while my clan fights for me, what kind of warrior does that make me? What kind of Mandalorian?" Candorus studied the boy. No, the young warrior. He'd raised for 12 years, recognized in Kote's expression the same determination that had made Clan Ordo legendary, the same refusal to back down that defined Mandalorian culture at its best. "The armorer will have my head for this," Candorus muttered. "But you're right. This is your fight as much as ours. Gear up, full combat loadout, and Kote." His tone became serious. "Deathwatch won't show mercy just because you're young. They'll try to kill you. You understand that?" "I understand," Kote replied, "and I won't kill them unless I have no choice, but I will defend my clan. That's what warriors do." "That's what Mandalorians do," Candorus corrected. "Now move. We have minutes before they breach the outer defenses." Clan Ordo settlement. Battle begins. The Deathwatch assault was professional and brutal. They came with overwhelming force, 60 warriors against Clan Ordo's 40, supported by artillery emplacements and aerial support that suggested Pre Vizsla had been planning this operation for months. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They assumed Clan Ordo would fight defensively, would try to protect their settlement and civilians, would be predictable in their tactical response. They didn't account for Kote. The young Mandalorian hit Deathwatch lines like a meteor strike. His speed made him almost impossible to track. His strength turned their numerical advantage irrelevant. He could engage multiple opponents simultaneously and emerge victorious through pure physical dominance, and his tactical training, refined through years of Mandalorian instruction, meant he fought smart rather than just strong. A Deathwatch warrior raised a blaster. Kote closed the distance in a blur, disarmed the warrior with a wrist lock that could have broken bones, but was carefully controlled, and used the captured blaster to disable 2 more opponents with stun shots before throwing the weapon aside. "I don't want to kill you," Kote called to the Deathwatch forces. "We're all Mandalorians. We should be unified, not fighting each other." "You're not Mandalorian," A Death Watch lieutenant snarled, drawing a vibroblade. "You're an alien wearing our armor, an insult to everything we represent." The lieutenant attacked with skill, refined through years of Death Watch training. But Coat had been trained by Clan Ordo's best instructors, had sparred against warriors since he could walk, and possessed reflexes that made the lieutenant's attacks seem slow. Coat had disarmed him without injury, threw him clear of the combat zone, and moved to engage the next wave of attackers. His tail, armored and functional, whipped out to catch weapons, to trip opponents, to serve as a fifth limb that made his fighting style unlike anything Death Watch had encountered. From his command ship, Pre Vizsla watched the battle unfold with growing fury. The foundling was dominating his warriors, not through luck or desperation, but through genuine skill combined with abilities that made normal Mandalorian combat capabilities look primitive. "Deploy the heavy weapons," Pre Vizsla commanded. "I don't care if we destroy half the settlement. That creature dies today." Artillery emplacements rotated, tracking Coat's movements, preparing to fire explosive ordnance that would level buildings and obliterate everything in a 50-meter radius. "Cote, get clear!" Canderous shouted over comms. "Artillery inbound. Your position. Move!" But Coat didn't move. Instead, he did something that even his clan had never seen him attempt. Something instinctive, driven by Saiyan biology, responding to mortal threat. He cupped his hands at his side, and energy began to gather. Not the force, that mystical field that bound the galaxy together. This was different. Raw power drawn from within, from his life force itself, concentrated and shaped through will and desperation. The energy took form, a sphere of brilliant blue-white light that grew in his palms, that hummed with barely contained fury, that felt like a sun condensed to fist size. Me. Coat's voice carried power that made the air vibrate. The technique came to him without training, without instruction. Pure instinct from Saiyan genetics that knew how to weaponize Ki, even if his conscious mind didn't understand the principles. Me. The artillery fired. Multiple shells arced through the air, converging on Coat's position, with trajectories calculated to ensure total destruction. Cote thrust his hands forward, and the energy released as a beam, a wave of concentrated power that struck the incoming artillery shells mid-flight and detonated them harmlessly. The beam continued, carving through Death Watch emplacements, destroying their heavy weapons, demonstrating power that should not exist in a 12-year-old child. The battlefield fell silent. Both Clan Ordo and Death Watch stared at the smoking crater where Coat's energy blast had carved through defensive positions, at the young Mandalorian standing at the center, with smoke rising from his palms, at the proof that he was something far beyond what anyone had anticipated. What was that? A Clan Ordo warrior breathed. That, the armorer said quietly from her position on the defensive walls, was the foundling revealing he's been holding back. The energy readings, she checked her instruments, exceeded anything our weapons can generate. He just destroyed a fully armored artillery position with raw energy projection. That's not technology. That's him. Pre Vizsla's shock transformed into rage. That proves it. That abomination isn't just alien. It's a weapon, something designed to destroy. It must be eliminated before it grows stronger. He descended from his ship personally, drawing the dark saber. the ancient weapon that was symbol of Mandalorian leadership, whose black blade could cut through Beskar itself, whose wielder commanded respect across all clans. "Foundling," Pre Vizsla called, igniting the darksaber. "You've demonstrated power, I'll grant you that. But power without tradition is meaningless. Power without pure Mandalorian blood is corruption. Face me. Blade to blade, and when I end you, it will prove that true Mandalorian strength comes from heritage, not from alien gifts." Kote looked at Canderous, seeking permission or guidance. His grandfather nodded slowly. "He's challenged you directly," Canderous said. "By Mandalorian tradition, you can't refuse without dishonor. But Kote, the darksaber can cut through your armor. One clean hit could kill you. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Kote replied, drawing his own beskar. "Not because tradition demands it, because if I refuse, he'll claim I'm afraid. He'll say that alien biology makes me powerful, but cowardly, and that insult doesn't just affect me, it affects Clan Ordo. Every foundling who's ever been adopted. Everyone who believes that choice matters more than birth." He stepped into the dueling circle that Deathwatch warriors created, facing Pre Vizsla across ancient stone that had seen countless such duels. "I accept your challenge," Kote announced formally. "Blade to blade, honor to honor. By Mandalorian tradition, this combat determines right. If I win, Deathwatch withdraws and acknowledges that foundlings can embody the creed. If you win," he paused, "then maybe you're right. Maybe I am just an alien playing at being Mandalorian." "You're certainly not Mandalorian," Pre Vizsla confirmed, his darksaber humming with contained power. "But you'll die, knowing you fought well for a creature that never belonged here." The duel began. Pre Vizsla had decades of combat experience. He'd trained with the darksaber since childhood, had mastered its unique balance and cutting power, had killed Jedi with the ancient weapon. His technique was flawless, his tactical thinking sophisticated, his confidence absolute. Against a normal opponent, he would have won within seconds. But Kote was not normal. The young Mandalorian met the darksaber with his beskar, and the impact sent shockwaves through both combatants. Pre Vizsla's eyes widened behind his helmet. The force of that parry was impossible. The strength required to stop the darksaber's momentum with a child's weapon exceeded what beskar should withstand. They exchanged blows, and Pre Vizsla recognized with growing horror that he was outmatched. Not in skill. Kote's technique was still developing, still showed his youth, but in speed, in strength, in raw physical capability that made normal Mandalorian combat formulas irrelevant. The darksaber was a weapon that cut through beskar, but Kote moved fast enough that Pre Vizsla couldn't land clean hits, positioned himself so that glancing blows slid off his armor rather than penetrating, and counterattacked with strength that dented Pre Vizsla's own beskar and drove the Deathwatch leader backward. "You see," Kote said, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "This strength isn't alien corruption. It's what I was born with, just like you were born into Clan Vizsla. Just like others are born Force-sensitive. Biology gives us tools. The Creed teaches us how to use those tools with honor. I'm not strong because I'm alien. I'm strong because I'm Mandalorian. Because my clan taught me that power means nothing without discipline. That strength serves the creed, that the greatest warriors are those who fight to protect rather than conquer." Pre Vizsla's rage peaked. He abandoned technique for raw aggression, attacking with everything he had, trying to overwhelm Kote through sheer fury. It was his mistake. Kote's tail whipped out, caught Pre Vizsla's ankle, and yanked. The Death Watch leader stumbled, his guard dropping for just a moment. Kote struck, not to kill, not to maim, but to disarm. His beskar caught the Darksaber's hilt with perfect precision, twisting it from Pre Vizsla's grip with strength that made resistance pointless. The ancient weapon flew through the air. Kote caught it with his tail, a deliberate choice, demonstrating that the very feature Pre Vizsla viewed as corruption could master Mandalore's most sacred weapon. "I win," Kote said simply. The Darksaber held in his tail while his beskar remained at the ready. By tradition, this combat determines right. Do you acknowledge that foundlings can be Mandalorian? That choice matters more than birth? That the creed is about honor, not genetics? Pre Vizsla stared at the impossible sight. A 12-year-old foundling with a tail holding the Darksaber, having just defeated a warrior with 40 years of experience, proving through combat that every principle Deathwatch held sacred was wrong. "I acknowledge nothing," Pre Vizsla spat. "You may have won this duel through alien tricks, but you haven't won the war. Deathwatch will return, and next time we'll bring force that not even your unnatural strength can overcome. Then you'll face Clan Ordo again," Canderous replied, stepping forward. "And every time you return, we'll defeat you, because we fight for principles that matter. Honor, protection of the weak, the belief that anyone can become Mandalorian through choice and action, while you fight for exclusion, for hatred of difference, for a vision of Mandalore that would make us weak through refusing to adapt." Pre Vizsla ordered his forces to withdraw, and Deathwatch retreated with the particular anger of those who'd been proven wrong through combat. The most definitive proof Mandalorian culture recognized. As the enemy ships departed, as Clan Ordo assessed damage and tended wounded, Kote stood in the training circle, still holding the Darksaber in his tail. "What do I do with this?" he asked, looking at the ancient weapon that symbolized leadership. "That," the armorer replied, approaching with her characteristic measured wisdom, "is a question you'll need to answer yourself. The Darksaber now belongs to you through rite of combat. By tradition, you could claim leadership of all Mandalorians, or you could return it to those you believe better suited to wield it. The choice, foundling, is yours." Kote studied the black blade, feeling its weight, recognizing the responsibility it represented. He was 12 years old. He'd just defeated one of Mandalore's most feared warriors. He held a weapon that could reshape Mandalorian culture. And he made a choice that proved he truly understood the creed. "I'll keep it," Kote decided. "Not because I want to lead, not because I seek power, but because Pre Vizsla will return. And when he does, I'll need every advantage. This weapon chose me through combat. I'll honor that choice by using it to defend those who can't defend themselves. That's what Mandalorians do." "This is the way," Canderous said with profound pride. "This is the way," Clan Ordo echoed, and watching the young warrior with the tail hold the Darksaber, symbol of Mandalorian unity, wielded by a foundling who'd proven that strength came from discipline rather than birth, they all recognized that Mandalore's future had just shifted. The Saiyan raised as Mandalorian had become a legend. and his journey was only beginning. 4 years later, Mandalore, capital city. The Civil War had been inevitable. For generations, Mandalore had been torn between competing visions. Traditionalists who believed warrior culture defined their identity, pacifists who thought peace was the only path to survival, and extremists like Death Watch who wanted to purge anything that didn't fit their narrow definition of Mandalorian purity. 16-year-old Coat stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, the darksaber secured at his hip alongside his beskar armor now fitted to his adult frame, or near adult, as his Saiyan biology continued accelerating his physical development beyond human norms. He stood nearly 2 meters tall, his muscular frame a testament to years of training combined with genetics that seemed designed to create the ultimate warrior. His tail, now thick as a human arm and covered in articulated beskar plates that allowed full mobility while providing protection, swayed thoughtfully as he studied the city where diplomats attempted to forge peace while warriors prepared for inevitable conflict. "You're brooding again," a female voice observed. Sabine Wren, daughter of Clan Wren, artist, explosives expert, and one of the few people Coat's age who'd become a genuine friend, approached with her distinctive multicolored armor, catching the afternoon light. "It's not a good look on you." The great Coat of Clan Ordo, wielder of the Darksaber, legendary warrior who defeated Pre Vizsla at age 12, brooding like a teenager. "I am a teenager," Cote replied, with a slight smile. "Technically. Though I'm not sure Saiyan aging counts the same way as human." "Still don't know what a Saiyan is," Sabine noted, leaning against the balcony railing beside him. "Nobody does. The armorer's been researching for 16 years and found exactly 0 references to your species in any galactic database. It's like you appeared from nowhere." "I did appear from nowhere," Coat reminded her. "Pod crashed on Concordia. No records, no origin data, just me and a tail. Sometimes I wonder if I should try to find out where I came from, who sent me, whether there are others like me somewhere in the galaxy." "Does it matter?" Sabine asked seriously. "You're Mandalorian, Cote. Clan Ordo raised you. You earned your armor. You follow the creed. Whatever you were born as doesn't change what you chose to become." "Pre Vizsla disagrees," Cote replied. "Death Watch still believes I'm a corruption, an alien pretending to be Mandalorian. And they're not the only ones. I hear the whispers. People who think the Darksaber should belong to someone truly Mandalorian." "People whisper because you're terrifying," Sabine countered. "You're 16, and you could probably fight a battalion single-handedly. You've mastered that energy projection technique, the one you used during the Death Watch attack that you still won't explain, and everyone's heard stories about your great ape transformation. Fear makes people question, but those who actually know you, we understand you're Mandalorian where it counts, in here." She tapped her chest plate over her heart. Before Coat could respond, proximity alarms wailed across the city. Defensive positions activated as sensors detected incoming craft, dozens of them moving in coordinated attack formation. "Death Watch," Coat said immediately, recognizing their ship configurations. "They're launching a full assault on the capital. This isn't a raid anymore. This is their bid for control." "Then we fight," Sabine replied, activating her helmet. My mother's forces are positioned at the eastern defenses. Clan Ordo is holding the spaceport. Where do you want to be?" "Wherever Pre Vizsla is," Kote replied, his expression hardening. "This has been building for 4 years. He wants the Darksaber back, wants to prove I'm unworthy. Time to settle it definitively." They rushed through the capital's corridors, joining the organized chaos of Mandalorian warriors, preparing for urban combat. But this battle would be different from previous skirmishes. This time, Death Watch had brought overwhelming force and had clearly been planning this assault for months. From his command ship, Pre Vizsla broadcast across all frequencies. "People of Mandalore, you have allowed weakness to corrupt our traditions. Pacifists like Duchess Satine, who would make us defenseless. Clans like Ordo, who adopt alien foundlings and pretend biology doesn't matter. Today, Death Watch restores true Mandalorian strength. Today, we purge the corruption and return to the old ways. And today," his voice became specifically targeted, "the foundling with the tail will die, proving that the Darksaber only serves those of pure Mandalorian blood." "He's obsessed with you," Sabine observed as they reached the city's main plaza, where Death Watch dropships were deploying troops. 4 years, and he's still fixated on proving you're not worthy. "Because I represent everything he fears," Kote replied, drawing the Darksaber. The ancient weapon ignited with its distinctive black blade that seemed to absorb light rather than emit it. If a foundling can embody the creed better than those born to it, then bloodline doesn't matter. Birth doesn't determine worth, and Death Watch's entire philosophy that pure Mandalorian heritage is what makes us strong becomes meaningless. The battle began with the particular brutality of civil war. Mandalorians fighting Mandalorians, clans divided. Warriors who trained together, now trying to kill each other over ideological differences that had festered into violence. Kote moved through the combat with efficiency that years of training and Saiyan biology made devastating. His Darksaber carved through Death Watch weapons and armor with contemptuous ease. His strength let him throw opponents in full beskar armor like they were children. His speed made him nearly impossible to target, and his tactical thinking, refined through Mandalorian instruction and enhanced by Saiyan combat instincts, let him read the battlefield and respond with precision that turned the tide wherever he engaged. But Pre Vizsla had prepared for Kote specifically. As the young Mandalorian fought through Death Watch lines, he suddenly found himself targeted by specialized weapons, ion disruptors designed to overload his nervous system, thermal detonators calibrated to generate the specific heat signature of full moonlight, and worst of all, a containment field that locked onto his position and began compressing. "You thought I'd fight you fairly." Pre Vizsla's voice came through speakers as the containment field tightened. "You're not Mandalorian, foundling. You don't deserve honor. You deserve extermination, like any invasive species that threatens native ecology." The field compressed, crushing with force that would kill a human instantly. But Kota was not human. His Saiyan biology, designed to survive extreme conditions, to adapt to pressure, to grow stronger through adversity, responded to the threat with the particular gift that made his species legendary across universes. Zenkai boost. His body adapted to the crushing pressure mid-confinement, his power increasing to compensate for the threat, his cells reorganizing themselves to become more efficient, more resilient, more deadly. When he flexed, just flexed, using a fraction of his strength. The containment field shattered like glass. "You want to see invasive," Coat said, his voice carrying across the battlefield with power that made even distant combatants pause. "You want to see alien. I'll show you what I've been holding back." He dropped into stance that was pure instinct, feet planted, hands cupped at his side, drawing energy from within. Not the slow, deliberate energy gathering from his first attempt years ago. This time he'd practiced, had refined the technique through years of experimentation, had learned to weaponize his kuei with precision that made his earlier displays look clumsy. Ka, mi, ha, me, ha! The beam erupted from his hands, not the wild, barely controlled blast from his first manifestation, but a focused lance of energy that carved through Deathwatch positions with surgical precision. It destroyed weapons without killing warriors, disabled ships without obliterating them, demonstrated power that was overwhelming, but controlled. The Mandalorians, both Clan Ordo loyalists and Deathwatch attackers, stared at the display. This wasn't the Force. Jedi couldn't do this. Sith couldn't do this. This was something else entirely, something that made ancient weapons and modern technology seem primitive by comparison. "What are you?" a Deathwatch warrior asked, his voice carrying horror. "I'm Mandalorian," Coat replied simply. "Raised by Clan Ordo, trained in the Creed, committed to protecting those who can't protect themselves. Whatever biology gave me this power, I choose to use it honoring the traditions that made me who I am." Pre-Vizsla, watching his carefully planned assault fall apart because one foundling possessed power that made military force irrelevant, made a desperate decision. He activated the thermal detonator array, the weapons designed to simulate full moonlight, to trigger Coat's Uzaru transformation in the middle of the capital city, where the resulting rampage would kill thousands. "If I can't defeat you as you are," Pre-Vizsla announced, "I'll force you to transform. Let the people see what you really are. A beast wearing Mandalorian armor. A monster that will destroy everything it claims to protect. And when you wake up surrounded by the bodies of those you killed in your rage, you'll understand that I was right. You were never one of us." The thermal array activated. Artificial moonlight, concentrated, intensified, calibrated specifically to trigger Saiyan biology, bathed Coat in its glow. The transformation began immediately. His body started expanding, fur erupting, features elongating toward the great ape form that he'd mastered in controlled conditions, but never attempted in combat, never tried to maintain, while the beast's rage threatened to overwhelm his consciousness. "Coat, fight it!" Sabine shouted, recognizing the danger. "You lose control here, in the middle of the city. I won't. Lose control," Coat forced out through a jaw that was reshaping, through a body that was growing to monstrous proportions, through a transformation that wanted to strip away his humanity and leave only primal fury. "I am Coat of Clan Ordo," he repeated mentally, the same mantra that had worked years ago on the training ground. "I am Mandalorian. I follow the Creed. Strength without discipline is merely destruction. I am not a beast. I am a warrior." But this time was different. This time, he was in combat, surrounded by enemies, with adrenaline flooding his system, and Saiyan battle instincts screaming at him to crush, to destroy, to dominate. The beast wanted blood. The warrior wanted control. And somewhere between those two impulses, Coat fought to maintain his identity. The transformation completed. A great ape, 30 meters of brown-furred fury, with red eyes blazing, stood in the Capitol Plaza, surrounded by buildings that suddenly seemed fragile, by warriors that suddenly seemed insignificant, by a city that would be destroyed if the beast won this internal war. Pre Vizsla laughed triumphantly. You see, this is what the Foundling truly is. Not Mandalorian, not even sentient, just a beast that we've been foolish enough to. The great ape's massive hand moved with speed that defied its size, grabbing Pre Vizsla before the Death Watch leader could react. And when it spoke, when Coat's voice emerged from the monster's throat, strained but conscious, proving that his mind remained in control, every Mandalorian present understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. I am Mandalorian, the great ape said, each word forced through physiology, never meant for speech. Biology doesn't change that. The creed is choice, and I choose to protect. The great ape didn't crush Pre Vizsla, despite easily possessing the strength, didn't rampage despite the transformation's inherent rage. Instead, it carefully, impossibly carefully given its enormous size, placed Pre Vizsla on the ground and stepped back, demonstrating control that made the transformation from threat into weapon. Surrender, Coat commanded, his voice echoing across the plaza. Death Watch has lost. Your leader is defeated. Your warriors are outmatched. Surrender and live, or continue fighting and die. Choose. Death Watch forces, watching their leader held helpless by a monster that could have killed him but chose mercy, began lowering their weapons. Not out of defeat. Mandalorians didn't surrender easily, but out of recognition that they'd been wrong. The Foundling wasn't a beast pretending to be Mandalorian. He was a Mandalorian whose biology happened to be unusual, and he was proving it through the most Mandalorian way possible, through combat that demonstrated both strength and honor. Pre Vizsla, released from the great ape's grip, stared up at the transformed warrior with expression mixing rage and something that might have been grudging respect. You win, Foundling, Pre Vizsla admitted. Not because you're stronger, but because you proved you could be stronger and chose restraint instead. That's Mandalorian. More Mandalorian than I've been. Then stop fighting, Coat replied. Death Watch can choose a different path. Strength through honor, unity through choice. That's the true Mandalorian way. The great ape looked away from the artificial moonlight, and the transformation began reversing. Within moments, Coat stood in the plaza again, exhausted, his armor shredded from the size changes, but conscious and unharmed. And surrounding him, watching with expressions ranging from awe to fear to profound respect, were hundreds of Mandalorians who had just watched a Foundling prove that the creed mattered more than bloodline, that choice mattered more than birth, that the greatest warriors were those who fought for principles rather than power. This is the way, someone said, not Clan Ordo, not even a traditional ally, but a Death Watch warrior laying down weapons in recognition of truth demonstrated through combat. This is the way, others echoed, the phrase spreading through the plaza like a wave. And watching from the balcony where political leaders had been coordinating defensive efforts, Duchess Satine cries, pacifist leader of Mandalore who'd spent years trying to move their culture away from violence, recognized something profound. The foundling with the tail had just accomplished what politics never could. He'd unified Mandalorians not through demanding peace, but through demonstrating that strength and honor were compatible, that power could serve protection rather than conquest. "Who is that?" a Republic observer asked, having witnessed the display through diplomatic channels. "That," Satine replied slowly, "is the future of Mandalore, whether we're ready for it or not." 3 days later. Clan Ordo settlement. Concordia Cote sat in the armorer's workshop, undergoing repairs to armor that had been shredded during his controlled Uzaru transformation. The ancient craftsperson worked in characteristic silence, her hammer strikes against beskar, creating a rhythm that had soothed generations of warriors. "You've become what I hoped you would," the armorer said finally, not looking up from her work. "When Canderous brought you to me 16 years ago, an infant with a tail, carrying power we didn't understand, I worried you would become a weapon rather than a warrior, that your strength would corrupt you, that your differences would isolate you, that the galaxy's fear of the unusual would destroy the good person I could sense beneath the alien biology." "You saw that in an infant?" Cote asked with surprise. "I saw potential," the armorer corrected. "Not destiny, not certainty. Just the possibility that if raised correctly, if taught proper values, if given genuine love and discipline in equal measure, you could become someone who used extraordinary gifts for extraordinary good." She set down her hammer and studied him with attention that made Cote feel like she was analyzing his soul rather than his physical form. "The galaxy is changing, Kotu," the armorer continued. "The clone wars have begun. Republic against separatists, Jedi serving as generals, millions of clone soldiers dying for political purposes they barely understand. Mandalore has remained neutral, but that neutrality becomes harder to maintain as both sides court our warrior culture. Deathwatch wanted to join the separatists. Duchess Satine wants complete pacifism. And you," she gestured at him, "you represent a third path. Strength without conquest, power serving protection, the creed as something that transcends faction." "What are you saying?" Kota asked. "I'm saying that wielding the Darksaber makes you a symbol whether you want to be or not," the armorer replied. Deathwatch's defeat doesn't end the debate about Mandalore's future. It just changes the players. You'll be courted by both the Republic and separatists. The Jedi will want to study you, to understand how you wield power that resembles the Force but clearly isn't. Sith, if any remain hidden in the galaxy, will covet your abilities, and ordinary Mandalorians will look to you for guidance about what path we should take. "I'm 16, Kote protested. "I'm not ready to lead Mandalore. I'm not even sure I'm ready to lead Clan Ordo." "No one is ever ready for leadership," the armorer replied. "Readiness is something you grow into through accepting responsibility. But there's something else you need to know, Cote. Something I've discovered through years of research into your biology." She pulled up holographic displays showing complex genetic analysis, energy signatures, and physiological studies that had been compiled over 16 years. Your species, these Saiyans that your pod's fragmentary data mentioned, were warriors, not just warrior culture like Mandalorians, but biological weapons, engineered or evolved specifically for conquest. Their homeworld was destroyed, presumably by someone who feared what they'd become. And you, she highlighted specific genetic markers. You're from a low-class warrior caste. Sent to Earth as an infant to conquer it once you grew strong enough. Your pod was programmed with that mission before it malfunctioned and brought you here instead. Coat absorbed this information with growing horror. I was supposed to conquer a planet. I'm a weapon, something designed for destruction. You were designed for conquest, the armorer corrected carefully. But what you were designed for isn't what you became. The Saiyans who sent you were eliminated before you could fulfill that purpose, and Clan Ordo raised you to understand that strength serves protection, not domination. Your biology gave you tools, Coat. The Creed taught you how to use those tools with honor. But if that's what I am, what I was meant to be, how do I know the conquest instinct won't emerge? Coat asked, his voice carrying genuine fear. What if one day I lose control? What if the Saiyan programming overrides everything you taught me? Then you'll fight it, the armorer said simply. The same way you fought to maintain consciousness during your transformation. The same way you fought every day to be better than your instincts demand. Biology is not destiny, Kote. Your Saiyan nature gives you strength, but your Mandalorian upbringing gives you wisdom to use that strength properly. She handed him a data chip. This contains everything I've learned about Saiyans, their history, their capabilities, their extinction. Study it. Understand what you come from. But remember that understanding your past doesn't obligate you to fulfill its expectations. Your coat of Clan Ordo, whatever the Saiyans intended you to be, died with them. What you choose to become is entirely your decision. Kote took the chip, feeling its weight despite minimal mass. His past, his origins, the truth about the species that had sent him across the galaxy as an infant weapon. There's one more thing, the armorer added. Your power, this Kai energy you manipulate, is growing. I've been tracking your output since you first manifested it at age 12. The growth is exponential. By my calculations, within 5 years, you'll be powerful enough to destroy capital ships with your energy attacks. Within 10 years, possibly planets. The question becomes, what does someone with that kind of power do in a galaxy, tearing itself apart through war? I fight for those who can't fight for themselves, Coat replied immediately, the answer coming from 16 years of conditioning. I protect the weak. I honor the creed. I demonstrate that strength serves justice, not conquest. Good answer, the armorer approved. But theory is easy. Practice is hard, because the galaxy is about to demand you make difficult choices, Kote. The Clone Wars will come to Mandalore eventually. When they do, neutrality becomes impossible. You'll have to choose Republic, separatists, or forge an independent path that serves neither. Before Coat could respond, Canderous entered the workshop with urgent expression, visible even through his helmet. Cote, we have visitors, his grandfather announced. Jedi, 2 of them, Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. They claim they're here on Republic diplomatic business. But their real interest is obvious. They want to meet the Mandalorian, who wields power that resembles the Force, but clearly isn't. Do I have to meet them? Coat asked. You're the wielder of the dark saber, Canderous replied. Symbol of Mandalorian unity. You meet them, or we insult the Republic by refusing their overture. And before you ask, yes, I'll be there. So will the armorer. You won't face Jedi scrutiny alone. Kote stood, his newly repaired armor gleaming, the darksaber secured at his hip alongside his beskar. He was 16 years old. He held a weapon that made him symbol of Mandalorian culture. He possessed power that was growing exponentially, and he was about to meet Force users who would recognize that his abilities came from something fundamentally different. "This is the way," Kote said, repeating the phrase that had guided him for 16 years. "This is the way," Canderous and the armorer echoed, and as they walked toward the meeting with Jedi who served a republic at war, Kote couldn't shake the feeling that his life, already complicated by alien biology and warrior culture, was about to become far more complex. The Saiyan raised as Mandalorian was about to enter the larger galaxy, and the Clone Wars would discover what happened when Mandalorian discipline merged with Saiyan power. The greatest warrior the galaxy had ever known was only beginning to reveal his true potential. The hole was ancient, carved from Concordia's mountain stone by the first Ordo warriors who'd settled this moon generations ago. Beskar banners hung from the walls, each one marking a battle won, an honor earned, a warrior who died defending the creed. The room carried weight of history, of tradition, of Mandalorian culture distilled into architecture and atmosphere. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood near the center of the hall, his Jedi robes pristine despite travel from Coruscant, his bearing projecting the calm diplomacy that had made him the Republic's preferred negotiator. Beside him stood Anakin Skywalker, younger, more volatile, his Force presence radiating barely controlled intensity that suggested he struggled with the emotional detachment the Jedi Order demanded. Both Jedi turned as Kote entered, flanked by Canderous and the armorer. And both Jedi's expressions shifted, surprise, curiosity, and in Anakin's case, something approaching recognition, as they studied the young Mandalorian who'd become legendary across the galaxy. Kote stood 2 meters tall, his beskar armor decorated with Clan Ordo's symbols and personal marks earned through combat. The darksaber hung at his left hip, its presence impossible to ignore. His tail, armored and clearly functional, moved with subtle grace that suggested it was as controlled as any other limb. And his eyes, dark, sharp, carrying intelligence, refined through years of tactical training, met the Jedi's gaze without fear or deference. "Master Kenobi, Knight Skywalker," Canderous greeted them formally. "Welcome to Clan Ordo. This is Kote, wielder of the Darksaber, warrior of our clan, and the foundling you've traveled far to meet." "Thank you for receiving us," Obi-Wan replied, his tone carrying genuine respect. "The Republic has heard much about the Mandalorian, who ended Death Watch's insurgency, who united fractured clans, and who," he paused delicately, "demonstrates unusual capabilities that have sparked considerable interest among the Jedi Council." "You mean they want to know if I'm Force-sensitive?" Kote said bluntly, his Mandalorian pragmatism cutting through diplomatic language. "I'm not. Whatever power I possess comes from my biology, not from the mystical energy field you serve." "Fascinating," Obi-Wan observed. "You're remarkably well informed about the Force for someone who doesn't touch it." "Mandalorians have been fighting Force users for thousands of years," the armorer interjected. "We understand the difference between power drawn from connection to a universal energy field and power generated internally through biological processes. Kote's abilities are the latter, measurable, physical, rooted in cellular energy manipulation rather than mystical communion. Anakin had been unusually quiet, studying Kote with intensity that made even the young Mandalorian uncomfortable. Through the Force, the Jedi Knight was attempting to analyze what he sensed and finding confusion rather than clarity. "You feel wrong," Anakin said finally, his bluntness matching Kote's own. "Not dark, not light, just absent. Like there's a person-shaped void in the Force where you should be. And that energy you radiate," he gestured vaguely. "It's similar to the Force, but structured differently, like comparing water to ice. Same fundamental substance, different state, Kai," Kote replied, using the term he'd discovered in the fragmented data about Saiyans. "Life energy weaponized. Every living thing generates it, but most species can't consciously manipulate it. Saiyans, my species, evolved or were engineered specifically to use Ki for combat. That's what you're sensing. Not Force absence, but Force irrelevance. My power doesn't draw from your mystical field, so to Force users, I probably feel like a blind spot." "Saiyans," Obi-Wan repeated thoughtfully. "I've consulted the Jedi archives extensively. There's no record of any species by that name. You're certain of your origins?" "As certain as I can be without more data," Kote replied. "My pod's computer contained fragmentary information, species name, homeworld called Vegeta. Warrior culture built around conquest. The planet was destroyed before I arrived here. I'm possibly the last of my kind, or at least the only one in this galaxy." "A sobering possibility," Obi-Wan acknowledged, "but it raises questions about why the Republic and the Separatists are so interested in you. A warrior of unprecedented power, wielding a weapon that symbolizes Mandalorian unity, possessing abilities that could shift the balance of the Clone Wars. Both sides will attempt to recruit you, Kote. The question is, which side will you choose?" "Neither," Kote replied, without hesitation. "Mandalore is neutral. We're not joining your war." "Neutrality is a luxury," Anakin countered, his tone carrying frustration. "The Separatists are conquering neutral systems. The Republic is desperate for allies. Sitting out the war isn't noble, it's privileged. People are dying while you hide behind tradition and refuse to help." "Anakin," Obi-Wan cautioned, but his former apprentice continued. "You've got power that could end battles before they start, save lives that conventional forces can't protect. And you're choosing to stay here on this moon while the galaxy tears itself apart. That's not honor. That's cowardice dressed up as principle." The tension in the hall became palpable. Canderous' hand moved toward his beskar. The armorer remained still, but watchful, and Kote's tail swished with barely controlled irritation. "Cowardice?" Kote asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Night Skywalker, I've fought to protect my people since I was 12 years old. I've defended civilians from Death Watch extremists who wanted to purge anyone they considered impure. I've united fractured clans through combat and diplomacy. I've proven repeatedly that strength serves protection, not conquest. So don't lecture me about cowardice when you know nothing about the choices I've made or the reasons behind them." "Then enlighten me," Anakin challenged. "Explain why someone with your abilities sits out a war where millions of clones, good men bred for battle, are dying for a republic that's trying to prevent tyranny from consuming the galaxy." Coat studied the Jedi Knight, recognizing something in Anakin's intensity that resonated uncomfortably. Passion barely controlled, power-seeking outlet. The same struggle Coat himself faced. How to be strong without becoming destructive. How to use gifts biology provided without letting those gifts define your identity. I sit out, Coat replied carefully, because I've learned what happens when powerful warriors throw themselves into conflicts they don't fully understand. My species, the Saiyans, were conquerors. They used their strength to dominate, to subjugate, to impose their will on weaker civilizations, and they were destroyed for it, eliminated by someone or something that recognized they'd become too dangerous to tolerate. He activated a holographic display showing the fragmented data the armorer had compiled. I was sent to Earth as an infant weapon, programmed to grow strong, then conquer the planet for Saiyan expansion. My pod malfunctioned and brought me here instead, where Mandalorians taught me that strength without discipline is merely destruction. That power serves the creed that the greatest warriors are those who fight to protect rather than dominate. So you learned restraint, Obi-Wan observed approvingly. A valuable lesson. But surely there's middle ground between conquest and isolation. The Republic doesn't want you to conquer, just to help defend those who cannot defend themselves. And who decides who deserves defending? Cote challenged. The Republic uses clone soldiers, living beings bred specifically for warfare, given no choice about their service, treated as disposable assets rather than people. The Separatists claim they're fighting against Republic corruption, that their cause is legitimate grievance against unjust government. Both sides claim moral high ground. Both sides commit atrocities. How do I choose which tyranny to support? The Republic isn't tyranny, Anakin said, but his conviction wavered slightly. Isn't it? Cote pressed. You've created a slave army. Don't call them anything else, because that's what clones are. Beings bred without consent, trained from birth to obey orders, dying by the thousands for a war they didn't start, and have no stake in beyond genetic programming. At least the Separatists use droids. Destroying a droid doesn't raise moral questions. But every clone who dies is a person, someone with thoughts, feelings, the capacity to choose their own path if given the chance, and the Republic treats them as expendable. The observation hit harder than Cote intended. Through the Force, Obi-Wan could sense Anakin's conflict. The Knight had formed bonds with clone troopers, had watched them die in battle, had struggled with the same moral questions Cote now voiced. "What would you have us do?" Obi-Wan asked quietly. "The clones exist. We didn't create them. The Kaminoans did, under mysterious circumstances that still trouble the Council. But they're fighting now, dying for the Republic. Should we abandon them because their origins are ethically complicated? Or should we lead them, protect them as best we can, and try to give meaning to their sacrifice?" "I don't have answers," Cote admitted. "That's why I stay neutral. Because rushing into conflict with power I barely understand, choosing sides in a war where both factions are morally compromised, seems like exactly the kind of arrogance that destroyed my species. Better to defend Mandalore, to perfect my control. To be ready if genuine threats emerge, rather than letting both sides manipulate me into becoming their weapon." Admirable philosophy. a new voice said from the hall's entrance, though I suspect it will be tested sooner than you anticipate. Everyone turned as a figure entered, male, humanoid, wearing robes that suggested wealth and political power. But it was his presence in the Force that made both Jedi immediately tense. Dark, sophisticated, carrying undertones that suggested this was no ordinary diplomat. "Count Dooku," Obi-Wan said, his hand moving subtly toward his lightsaber. "What brings the Separatist leader to Mandalore?" "The same thing that brought you, Master Kenobi," Count Dooku replied, with aristocratic calm. "Curiosity about the Mandalorian who wields power, rivaling Force users without touching the Force. I've come to make an offer, Coat of Clan Ordo, one that I suspect the Republic cannot match." Canderous moved to intercept, but Cote gestured for him to stand down. "I'll hear him out, Babuir. I can handle one old man, regardless of his political affiliation." "How delightfully confident," Dooku observed, studying Cote with visible interest. "You're young, 16, my intelligence suggests, yet you carry yourself with authority beyond your years. The result of Mandalorian training, I presume. Or is it something inherent to your Saiyan biology?" "You know about Saiyans?" Cote asked with surprise. "I know many things the Jedi archives don't contain," Dooku replied, "including fragments of information about warrior species from dimensions or distant galaxies that occasionally find their way into our records. The Saiyans were conquerors, yes, but they were also survivors, a species that grew stronger through adversity, that evolved in response to challenge, that represented the principle that power should belong to those strong enough to claim it." "That sounds like Sith philosophy," Obi-Wan interjected. "Might makes right. The strong dominate the weak, the very principles the Jedi Order opposes." "The Jedi Order opposes many truths about the universe," Dooku countered, "including the fundamental reality that peace maintained through suppressing strength creates weakness, that denying passion and emotion makes you less rather than more, that the galaxy respects power far more than it respects serenity." He turned his full attention to Kota. "You understand this already, don't you? Your Mandalorian upbringing taught you that strength matters, that warriors earn respect through combat, that honor comes from demonstrating capability. The Jedi would have you suppress your power, meditate away your passion, become another emotionless tool serving their dogma. But the Separatists, we recognize that strength should be celebrated, that power properly applied creates order, that warriors like you should lead rather than serve." "You're offering me command?" Cote asked skeptically. "I'm offering you purpose," Dooku corrected. "The Republic is corrupt. Thousands of years of bureaucracy and compromise have made it weak, inefficient, unable to protect its citizens. The Separatists are building something better. A government where strength and competence matter more than political connections, where warriors are respected rather than feared, where beings like you can achieve their full potential without artificial restrictions. And all I have to do is conquer for you," Cote challenged. "Become the weapon my species was designed to be, pointed at your enemies. I'm offering you the chance to matter," Dooku replied, "to be more than a symbol on a neutral moon, to use your extraordinary gifts for something larger than clan politics. Join the Separatists, Cote. Lead our forces. Show the galaxy what a true warrior can accomplish when unleashed without Jedi restrictions or Republic bureaucracy holding them back." The offer hung in the air, tempting in its simplicity. Kote could feel it, the appeal of being valued for his strength, of not having to constantly justify his power, of finally being allowed to fully express what his biology made possible. It was the same temptation that had destroyed the Saiyans, the belief that strength justified anything, that power was its own justification. "No," Kote said firmly. "No," Dooku repeated, genuine surprise showing through his aristocratic composure. "You're refusing both the Republic and the Separatists, choosing to remain neutral while the galaxy burns. I'm choosing not to become what destroyed my species," Kote replied. "The Saiyans believed might made right. They conquered because they could, destroyed because their strength made them feel entitled to domination. And someone, some force or civilization or cosmic power, eliminated them for it, judged them as a threat, and erased them from existence." He drew the dark saber, its black blade igniting with subtle hum. "This weapon represents Mandalorian unity. Leadership earned through combat and maintained through honor. I won it by defeating someone who thought pure bloodline mattered more than character. And I'll keep it by demonstrating that strength serves protection, not conquest. So no, I won't join your separatists. I won't help the Republic. I'll defend Mandalore, perfect my control, and be ready if genuine threats emerge. But I won't let either side turn me into their weapon." "A waste," Dooku said with obvious disappointment. "But predictable, I suppose. The Jedi's influence runs deep, even among those who claim independence from their philosophy." "Count Dooku," Obi-Wan interjected, his diplomatic instincts recognizing dangerous escalation. "Perhaps we should all depart and allow Mandalore to maintain its neutrality. Neither Republic nor Separatist forces have business here if the Mandalorians choose independence." "Agreed," Dooku replied, "though I suspect circumstances will eventually force young Kote to choose. Neutrality is comfortable until it becomes impossible, and this war will come to Mandalore eventually, not because either side desires it, but because the strategic value of Mandalorian warriors makes neutrality untenable." He turned to leave, but paused at the entrance. "One more thing, Kote. Your energy manipulation, this KE you mentioned, is impressive for someone untrained. But you're working on instinct rather than technique. If you ever want proper instruction in weaponizing life force, in truly mastering what your biology makes possible, the Separatists would welcome the opportunity to help you achieve your full potential." "I'll master it myself," Kote replied, "the same way Mandalorians have always mastered their capabilities, through training, discipline, and refusal to let power corrupt purpose." After both Jedi and Separatist departed, after the hall cleared, and only Clan Ordo remained, Canderous approached Kote with expression mixing pride and concern. "You made powerful enemies today," his grandfather observed. "Both the Republic and Separatists will remember that you refused them. They'll view Mandalore's neutrality as rejection rather than independence." "Let them," Kote replied. "I'm not interested in being anyone's weapon. I'm Mandalorian. That's enough." But watching through distant sensors, through intelligence networks that spanned the galaxy, 3 very different entities had taken notice of the encounter. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, secretly the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, watched holographic recordings of Kote's confrontation with Dooku, his yellow eyes analyzing every detail. A warrior with power independent of the Force, wielding the darksaber, refusing to join either side in a war Palpatine himself had orchestrated. Interesting, potentially threatening, worth monitoring closely. The Jedi Council debated what they'd learned about Kote in emergency session. A being of enormous power who wasn't Force-sensitive, who'd refused diplomatic overtures, who represented a wild card in a conflict where the Jedi desperately needed allies. Some argued for leaving him alone. Others suggested watching carefully. A few, led by Mace Windu, proposed that someone with Kote's capabilities couldn't be trusted to remain neutral indefinitely, and on a hidden separatist base, Count Dooku made preparations. The boy had refused recruitment, but that refusal was temporary. Everyone had leverage. Everyone could be turned. The question was finding what Kote valued enough to compromise his principles, and then threatening or offering it at the critical moment. The Clone Wars had noticed the Saiyan raised as Mandalorian, and whether Kote wanted it or not, his neutrality was about to be tested in ways that would force him to choose, remain isolated while the galaxy burned, or step into conflict and risk, becoming the very weapon he'd spent 16 years learning not to be. 2 years later, when separatist forces finally attacked Mandalore, despite all diplomatic assurances of neutrality, Kote of Clan Ordo made his choice, not for the Republic, not for the separatists, but for the people, the civilians caught between two massive military forces, the children who'd done nothing to deserve becoming casualties, the weak who couldn't defend themselves. He fought not as a soldier serving political causes, but as a Mandalorian following the creed. Strength serving protection, power defending the vulnerable, honor maintained through impossible choices, made with eyes open to consequences. His key attacks, refined through 2 years of dedicated training, proved devastating against both droid armies and Republic clone forces when they inevitably clashed on Mandalorian soil. His controlled Uzaru transformation became legendary, a 30-meter warrior who could level fortifications while carefully avoiding civilian casualties, and the darksaber in his hands became symbol of something the galaxy desperately needed. Proof that power could be wielded without corruption, that strength could serve justice rather than domination. The Jedi Council watched with grudging respect and persistent concern. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine made plans to either recruit or eliminate this unpredictable element before his grand scheme reached culmination. Count Dooku recognized that his initial offer had been rejected by someone who genuinely meant what they said about honor and principle. And ordinary people, clone troopers, civilians, even battle droids possessed of sufficient sentience, began telling stories about the Mandalorian with the tail, the foundling who'd been raised by warriors, who'd mastered power that should have consumed him, who proved that choice mattered more than destiny, that discipline mattered more than biology, that the truest strength came from knowing when not to use it. Kote never learned what happened to Earth, the planet his pod had originally targeted, the world that might have raised him differently, that would have made him into someone completely unlike who he'd become. He never met other Saiyans, never discovered if any survived beyond the fragmented records in his pod's computer. But he'd found something more valuable than origin or species identity. He'd found a culture that accepted him, a family that raised him, a creed that gave his power purpose. He was Mandalorian, not by birth, not by blood, but by choice repeated every day through actions that honored the traditions which had saved him from becoming a conquering weapon. The Saiyan biology gave him strength that could destroy planets. The Mandalorian upbringing gave him wisdom to use that strength, protecting them instead. And somewhere, in whatever cosmic force guided destinies across infinite possibilities, the universe recognized that sometimes the most powerful warriors were those who chose restraint over conquest, who wielded strength in service to principles rather than ambitions, who proved that might didn't make right. Honor made right, and power without honor was merely destruction wearing a warrior's face. This is the way. Kote of Clan Ordo, wielder of the dark saber, last of the Saiyans, greatest warrior Mandalore had ever produced, stood on the walls of his settlement and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, wars raged, civilizations rose and fell, power-hungry beings plotted conquests and rebellions and schemes that would reshape the galaxy. And when those schemes threatened the innocent, when tyranny came knocking on doors of those who couldn't defend themselves, when strength was needed to protect rather than conquer, Kota would be there, not as a Republic soldier, not as a separatist commander, not as anyone's weapon or tool or asset, but as a Mandalorian warrior who understood that the greatest battles were fought not for territory or political advantage, but for principles that made civilization worth defending. His tail swayed thoughtfully. His armor gleamed in starlight. The dark saber hummed at his hip, waiting for the next time it would be needed. And Kote smiled, knowing that whatever his biology designed him to be, whatever his species had intended, whatever destiny might have planned, he'd chosen something better. He'd chosen the way. This is the way.